Hello, and welcome to a special edition of Community Connections. I'm Charles CLAPSADDLE, Station Manager for Manatee Educational Television, and it's been our privilege over the last few years to talk to people in this community who have continued to make a difference, community leaders and people who have dedicated their lives to helping others. And it is our great privilege to have on this edition of Community Connections someone who personifies that, Ms. Luz Corcuera, Program Manager for the Healthy Start of Manatee. Luz, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to come and talk to us a little bit about what Healthy Start of Manatee does, but also the influences that have been made in your life. And of all the people that we continue to work with, you are truly one of those individuals who continually, day by day, makes a difference in this community.
Thank you, Charles. It's a real honor for me to be here today, and you're very generous with your words.
Well, it's really my pleasure. But we want to go in detail about your background and your history and the influences that have been made upon your life. But first of all, let's talk a little bit about Healthy Start of Manatee and the work that they do in this community for women and children.
Healthy Start Coalition of Manatee County is a community coalition, and it's made up of several community partners. Our goal is to make sure that every pregnant woman receives services. And also, once the woman delivers a baby, we follow up those babies until they are 3 years old. Our services have no cost whatsoever, so we rely on several sources of funding, including private grants and donations. Mm-hmm. And we provide comprehensive case management to women, and also wraparound education and support. We have classes such as childbirth education classes, breastfeeding, psychosocial counseling, support groups, the outreach services, the community health worker program, and many other programs that just keep happening because of the needs that we have in the community.
Well, the value that you bring to women and children in this community is immeasurable. And it's been our privilege over the last few years to work with you on some of those initiatives that you've instigated. But the work that you do for women and children is such a valuable tool because there seems to be a gap in some of the resources that women are looking for when they're expecting. Is that correct?
That is correct, Charles. If we look at the makeup of the community in the past 10 years, it has changed dramatically. We have a great influx of Latino families, right, Haitian families, and we have made an effort to mirror the makeup of the community and provide competent, culturally and linguistically appropriate services for those families. We also have so many barriers, as you know, mainly transportation. If you don't have a car in Florida, it's very difficult for anybody to access services. So what we do is we try to go to where the women are, especially the migrant camps. And in doing so, I am very proud of the team that works for Healthy Start Manatee. Right. We not only have women that are very well prepared, but also very sensitive to the cultural and linguistic needs. Yes. And also they have a passion, just like the same passion I share with them about moms and babies.
And your passion and your dedication is just a driving force for Healthy Start Manatee. And you've been involved in so many different types of initiatives, the Safe Sleeping initiative that you've kind of instigated throughout the county is such a vital part. Cribs, breastfeeding awareness, all of those assets that as you as an organization can provide, it's far-reaching. And Healthy Start and your executive director, Mr. Leonard, are to be congratulated, for the efforts that you put forth.
Thank you, Charles. It's very easy to do your job when you love what you are doing. Right. And for us, it's so important to make sure that we really give every baby a safe start and a happy start in life.
Yeah. And it's a wonderful thing. We want to go into more detail about Healthy Start and how people can find out more about it. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But since this program is about community and connections, and we always like to find out a little bit about people and their history and what they're doing. And obviously, you've come a very far distance to be here with us today, because you started out in Lima, Peru. And tell us a little bit about your early years and your family.
I am a child of with 6 other siblings, so it is a large family to begin with. And I was very fortunate and blessed to have parents who really love each other and who love their children. In my household, education was key, and my parents mentioned over and over that our main job was to go to school, to do well, and to give back to the world. And it is very interesting that my own parents, when they did volunteer work, they focused on literacy. And they made sure that many families had children who were able to read and write. Because literacy is not something that just comes from heaven, that it's something that we have to work at, and it requires a community effort, especially in countries where literacy is a privilege.
And coming from Peru, it was it was a kind of a different environment, obviously, than the United States of America. Tell us a little bit about your education and your path through schools.
I was very fortunate that my parents were able to afford good education for myself and my siblings. And so I was exposed to a lot of Catholic schools in the very beginning. While they provided great academic service for the community, they also had so many rules and regulations which were a little challenging for me as a child. And I obviously made a mark by constantly challenging the status quo there. But I have to admit that there were great influences in my life. There were some religious sisters who basically modeled for me what giving back to the world was all about. They worked tirelessly to make sure that we learned so many things. And actually, I owe to a priest who took upon himself to start teaching English to children. So I was one of those children who began taking English lessons at a very young age. And fortunately, I was able to go to college too, because that's also very difficult for so many people. We have about 20 or 30,000 applicants every year that want to go to college, and only 2,000 spots in every university. And then it becomes also expensive if you can't afford it. And so I was grateful that I was one of those who could go to college. And while all my vocational tests, pointed out that I should be in the School of Law, I did apply to the School of Law. However, that year they only had one entrance to the School of Law, and I had to wait another semester. But being the impatient person that I am, I looked really quickly at the careers that were available that day, and I thought that psychology was the basics for everything. And so I said, well, no, I'm going to just apply to psychology. So that's what I did. But I didn't know that I was going to love psychology as much as I do. And so I just continue and major in clinical and organizational psychology back in Peru.
And so you went into psychology and you said, well, this is something that I want. But let me ask you this: how difficult is here you are, a very intelligent, independent woman. Was school difficult for you? Was it difficult being a woman in the university system in Peru?
The school was not very difficult. The challenging part was when I started practicing, because in Latin America, the psychiatrists and the psychologists are at 2 different levels. So the doctors always minimize the work that the psychologists do. And that was primarily why I didn't want to go into clinical psychology.
I see.
I chose to do organizational psychology. But it was challenging because, I was invited to have conversations in the community or panels, and as soon as they saw me, they thought, who's this woman? They treated me like a kid.
Really?
And it was a little difficult to overcome those barriers. However, I think over the years, I was very happy with what I was doing.
Mm-hmm. So as you left the university and went into practice, what were some of the things that kind of like motivated you to work in organizational psychology?
Primarily, I think it was the fact that there was less power struggle with psychiatrists. And second, that I saw the value of being able to have all the resources at hand and empower people. And I was very fortunate that I worked with really large organizations in Peru and became an integral part of the human resources side. So I did the evaluation to hire new personnel, and I work on developing their career path. But also, I developed such a personal relationship with each and every one of them that I knew them as people and their families. And so when we had incentive plans, I was able to give an opinion and feedback on where we should be heading up. And we had so many programs that encouraged them to go back to school. So again, education became one of the biggest motivators in my career as well.
Well, one of the things, and I'd like for you to take a moment to do this, intelligent, independent woman, and in a Latino community, sometimes that's not always recognized as an asset. Did you find yourself having difficulty being that assertive, independent woman in a Latino environment?
Yes. I had some resistance, for some male-dominated groups to value my opinion and also to be challenged in many areas by me. But also, it was interesting that even my sisters, would say to me very often, at this rate, you will never find a husband that will want to be with someone, who is so challenging, so independent, so strong-minded. And, that didn't really matter to me. But I was very lucky that, I found a Peruvian man who I've been married for 33 years. And who, thank you, who never took offense that I was independent or I had my own ideas. He understood me, and I think maybe that's why we stayed together for so long.
Well, and having met Luis, he's a tremendous person, a great individual. But he had a successful career, and he was already working in Peru. And as you married, there came a decision that perhaps there's some other things that we as a family would want to do. And tell us a little bit about that pathway.
Well, Luis was very successful professionally, and so was I. But there was a moment when we had our first child that those were the years of the terrorism.
And I'd like you to take a little bit about that so the community would understand. I mean, Peru was in that kind of in those days. It was a terrorist type of environment. What was it? The Shining Path?
The Shining Path, yes.
And tell us a little bit about that environment during those days.
It was very difficult to be able to perform normal duties like going to work or going for an entertainment or take our child to a children's show because of the unrest. We didn't know at what time or what moment or what place we were going to hear explosion. It was a car, that was filled with bombs, and we didn't know who was going to be kidnapped. And some of our friends, unfortunately were kidnapped, and then they asked for ransom for their safety and their lives.
Exactly.
And so my husband and I witnessed so many friends who endure these personal tragedies. And that made us think whether the safety of and the future of our child and our future children was at stake. And so we made a painful decision to explore somewhere else. Initially, we were going to go to Australia just because we had a friend there who was a priest. And then being at a dinner one day, we understood that Canada was offering a few number of visas for small families. And so we were encouraged to apply. And little did we know that the person that was encouraging us was the Canadian ambassador. And so we applied for a visa, and in 6 months, all the paperwork, everything was completed, and we were given the opportunity to emigrate to Canada. And so we went, not having any family, not knowing anybody, and not even imagining how the winter would be like.
Well, I have to say, you know, coming from Peru and, you know, and having experienced, you know, the seasons and everything, moving to Canada, it had to be quite an eye-opening experience.
It was. But at the same time, it just reaffirmed my sense that no matter where you go, no matter what you do, as long as you know who you are, you're going to encounter people that are similar to you. And we were very lucky that we found a lot of friends who became our family those years that we were alone. And also, we're very blessed that we had our second child while we were in Canada. And even though the adjustment process was a little difficult because Luis and I had to work really hard to get our professional accreditations.
And were you proficient in English when you immigrated?
No, that's a very interesting question because, as you know, I was going through high school and college. I was very good in English, so I thought. Basically, I knew how to read and write very well, but because I didn't need to use the language, I didn't practice very much. But I, you know, was under the belief that I was very proficient in English. So when I moved to Canada, I realized that I couldn't understand everything that someone was saying, and then I couldn't talk fast enough. And so it was also a learning experience for me, having to practice the language. It took me like about 3 months to get acquainted with the language.
Now, you settled in probably one of the most metropolitan cities in Canada, in the city of Toronto. Tell us a little bit about your first few years there. I mean, finding all that snow and ice and everything had to be kind of an eye-opener.
The first year, I think seeing the seasons for the first time was just beautiful. I still have a special place in my heart and in my mind for fall. I can't see anything wrong with fall. It's the perfect season. But then when we move into the winter, the first Christmas, seeing the snowfall, you know, it was very heartwarming. Luckily, we were inside, you know, but when you're outside and you have small children and you have to venture to walk against the wind, you know, and sometimes the temperatures were below 15 below zero, and with a wind chill factor, it felt like 40 below zero. So it was very, very different. Those were the years that my children really loved winter sports, but Luis and I became more reluctant to spend more time outside.
Well, let's talk, if we can, for just a moment about your daughters, Mariella and Daniela. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you know, both of them, and I want you to talk a little bit about not only their success, but growing up with two young daughters in a foreign country, getting your accreditation, learning English. It had to be a little taxing for you, but as a family unit, you kind of came together and worked very hard to making this all possible.
I think Toronto is such a beautiful and multicultural city that I never felt a stranger, because many people that I met, you know, they spoke English with an accent, and they had children, small children, just like we did. And when we had our daughters, they helped us integrate into the society. And at the same time, we made a rule that we would only speak Spanish at home, so that they would be always bilingual. Wow. They resented that at the very beginning, but now they are really grateful that we have that rule at home, because they really speak both languages very fluently. And then being in Toronto and having the opportunity to do French immersion, they also took classes, you know, half of the day English and half of the day French. So they speak French very well, especially Mariella now, who has settled in Europe, and she is trilingual, and now she's learning German as well. And so my kids were raised in an environment where the parents were doing homework, where the parents were going to school. And so it was not for them strange to have homework and to be sitting at the table. Our trips were to the library. They were free. Having a library card was an investment for us. And we would go as a family, and the kids would have the children's section to spend time at. And also, the location of the library in the area that we live in, North York in Toronto, also had a skating rink. And it had so many other facilities that the kids could enjoy. So my kids grew up used to going on trips to the library, or we would go to the Lake Ontario, and the harbor front, you know, Canada's Wonderland. And there were so many beautiful parks. And having experienced the unrest in Peru, for us, experiencing the peace that comes with being in a country like Canada, you know, we could have the kids playing at very late at night during the summer, and we wouldn't have to worry that someone was going to come or try to kidnap them or kidnap us. So it was
there was that stability
nice, totally.
in the country.
Yeah.
And you know, and I must say, you know, from talking about your daughters taking them to the library, I mean, and you've talked, and I've heard you speak about the importance of reading to your child, and the importance of, you know, having that family unit, you know, so that bond exists. And knowing that your daughters are very successful now and have moved on to, you know, wonderful opportunities and in the country and internationally, it's got to be very important to you as a system to know that, you know, education continued to play that vital part in their development.
It is. It is very rewarding for me to see that my daughters value education, and I'm sure that they will do the same when they have children. But also they support education. I learned about the challenges that some high school students were facing thanks to to Mariela. She was a junior in high school. While she was taking all AP classes, she had some friends, you know, who couldn't apply to college at the time that she was working on her college applications, and while she was getting so many scholarships. She brought this to my attention, so I learned about the undocumented kids that we have in the United States that couldn't apply to college. So I thought it was a great injustice, while my children had the opportunity to pursue those really great channels. There were some kids who were equally talented that didn't have that opportunity, and that made me a huge advocate for the DREAM Act and immigration, and very vocal about this issue, because I don't think the children should be punished for the mistakes that the parents make. And
that's an excellent point, and I want to talk a little bit more about that. But during your stay in Canada, and how many years were you there, Luz?
We were about 14 years in Canada.
And as the family grew and, you know, and prospered, there came a time when Luis was offered, you know, some positions right here in Florida, in Sarasota. So there was a transition from the winters of Canada to Sarasota. How did that come about, and when did that occur?
It was in 1999 that Luis was offered the opportunity to transfer to Sarasota. And, you know, it was very appealing to hear that Sarasota is a beautiful city, has beautiful weather. And however, because we had worked so hard trying to integrate into Canada, I was a little reluctant to make the move. But Luis came for a year, and he was commuting home until it became very difficult for the family. And also that we came here to visit him, and I fell in love with Siesta Key. That's what really made me consider moving here. And so we joined Luis, and my kids were not very happy because Mariela was a junior in high school, and Daniela was in elementary school, and she started playing soccer and swimming, and so she was fine, but it was a more difficult transition for Mariela. However, I must say that my kids really put everything they had into this move, and again, they adjusted so well, and they excel in school. And we began enjoying this beautiful weather. I think it's such a blessing that we can enjoy.
And a wonderful environment, too. But one of the things I'd like for you to take a moment, if you could, Luz, is that, you know, coming from a city the size and scope of Toronto to a place in the South, in Florida, and Sarasota. It was a bit of a transition because you can be assimilated perhaps in a large community like Toronto, but here it was a little different. What kind of reception did you perceive that you were getting when you came to Sarasota?
I think, first of all, people noticed my accent right away, so they started saying things like, I hear an accent, where are you from? And then second, they assume I was Mexican, because there is a perception that every Latino person that comes to Manatee, Sarasota, has to be Mexican, even to the point that my youngest daughter, she was in elementary school, and one day the kids had asked her how come she spoke good English and why she was so smart. And then she came home and she said, Mom, am I Mexican? And I said, no, you are not, you know, and things like that about these presumptions. But at the same time, I think that we met wonderful people, and that led me to discover a beautiful community. And through my work and serving so many families, I discovered so many generous people who didn't know anything about the issues or the challenges that families at risk or families in need face. And they began supporting our efforts. And so I must say that this community has a heart, and it's a beautiful place to be. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else right now.
And your commitment to this community is just so important, because as you relocated, there came a time when you said, well, you know, I want to do something. I want to give back. Again, it was a whole thing of accreditations coming from Canada. You had to get accredited in the United States. Is that correct?
Yes, that was the biggest challenge. I made the decision not to go into private practice as I did in Canada. And so I just worked for different organizations using my background and expanding it. Because I fell in love with maternal child health, I just broadened my scope on those areas. So I became a childbirth educator and certified lactation consultant, but also it seems like I have been born to be in class, and so I also view my job as a ministry, and also work on a master's degree in pastoral ministry while I was getting acquainted with Florida here. And I think it's one of the best things that I did for myself, to be able to deepen my understanding of my own faith and other people's values when it comes to faith and hope.
And I think that's kind of evident in the work that you do, is that it's an uplifting and positive and comforting assistance that you offer. And I think that stems from that spiritual side of you. But I must say, we can digress for just a moment. You met an individual here in Manatee, Sarasota, who played a big part in your life, and that was Sister Nora. And can you tell us? And unfortunately, Sister Nora has retired and moved on to to a retirement community. But she played a big part in this community and in her work in this area. But you developed a lifelong friendship. And tell us a little bit about that.
Sister Nora is known to many of us as the Mother Teresa of Bradenton. When I met Sister Nora, it was almost at the very beginning, and she asked me for a favor. And when you say yes to Sister Nora, you never get away from her. And Sister Nora was one of the most beautiful people that I had the fortune to meet. She was instrumental in my spiritual life, but also in knowing that there is a strength in the partnerships. Because what she did is she called her angels. She said that the reason why we have so many angels that are not doing very much is because we don't put them to work. And so she called upon the angels and gave every angel a task. And because of that model, I've been able to reach out to people and establish meaningful partnerships to be able to carry out our mission. And Sister Nora has been instrumental. But there is also another religious sister that I met at Berry University at the Rice School for Pastoral Ministry, Sister Sally Latkovich. She was my professor of social justice. And I have to say that her influence and the learning that I had in that class really made easier for me to adjust to this new environment. Made easier for me to understand that we are all connected no matter what. When people say, those children, I say, our children, because they are all our children. You know, we have a responsibility as a community. And Sister Sally Latkovich showed me that we are the church, we. And the hierarchy is a different thing. We are the church, and we have the power to make changes and to influence people. And she also, along with Sister Nora, always mentioned that we have to live in hope, because if we give up our hope, we have nothing left. And yes, those two women have been a great influence and great support, and they continue to be great friends in my life.
And I would suggest to you, Luz, that that hope that you mentioned, that's what you instill in many of the people that you work with on a day-to-day basis. Because some of the people that you work with, you know, they have great obstacles to overcome, but you, in the efforts that you and Healthy Start does, provides them with hope so they can continue to see something in the future. And I would suggest that's the greatest gift that you could probably give people, is hope.
Thank you, Charles.
Well, let's go talk a little bit more now as we kind of transition. You've been in Sarasota and Florida for a while. You've worked in a variety of different things, but you came to Healthy Start Manatee. And how was that transition?
When I moved to Sarasota, Manatee, I worked with LifeLink Child and Family Services at first, and I worked with them for a year. While the work was very important and meaningful, it was very challenging because they had so many families who were in foster care. And maybe that's why I know so many of the judges, because I took upon myself to make appointments and tell them about the reality of their situation, that the lawyers...
You were never shy about going and knocking on doors, were you?
And so it was very challenging to see that, you know, we were not providing what the families needed, because there is a system in place that sometimes fails them. And they didn't have an understanding on why some women that never learned to play or to nurture their children, were never nurtured themselves, couldn't give what they didn't have. And my job was to educate people so that we could provide those tools for them to be successfully parenting those children. And then I worked for Sarasota Counseling Center. I lasted a year there. I was hired to provide services primarily to the Latino families, but because I was skilled and I had a lot of experience, I ended up having a wait list for the Latino families and having to see other more complex cases that were also more billable to the insurances. And so I resented the fact that I felt I was being used as a token of diversity, and rather than serving the Latino community as I was hired to do so, I ended up not doing that. And so I looked for other opportunities. And you know, while I was there, I worked with a lot of the Healthy Start families. And I really enjoy seeing the babies and seeing the new moms and working with them and the couples. So when I look at Healthy Start Manatee, I remember interviewing with Fred, and I asked him the questions about a position they had. And I said to him then and there, this is not for me because it's very prescribed. And I am not used to do that. There is a lot of paperwork involved. And he said, but I have something else. And Fred was very persistent. I have to credit Fred for
Fred Leonard, who's the executive director.
He said, and I have a grant, and I think we've never been able to develop a program that includes a component of outreach and education. And so I look at it, and then I consider working part-time. And I remember telling him that I didn't like the location of their offices. And when you work with the community, you had to be in the community. And that's why they failed, because they were trying to develop a program from their desks. And so he laughed and he said, I agree with you. He said, you have all the freedom to be creative and be efficient and effective.
Right.
And so I joined Healthy Start part-time. And then in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks, I had several support groups in the community, established partnerships with the churches. And so Fred was so pleased, and so was the board. And as time went on, they offered me a full-time position as program director.
That's excellent.
And I'm still there.
And I must say that the dedication that you bring in there, and we've had the opportunity over the last few years to work with you in a variety of Healthy Start things, and you're always there and you're always outreaching, and no task is too small or too difficult for you to undertake. From Christmas programs where you've outreached to family members to provide them with a Christmas, to World Breastfeeding Month, and to create greater awareness. The safe sleeping thing, I think, is such a valuable component. We've seen you at a variety of activities in the community, and the Children's Summit, where you talk about, you give away cribs and things for families. It's such an important part of community outreaching, and I think that that pathway that started as that university student, trying to give back and remember that it's always good to do something for others, is really evident in the type of work that you continue to do and the leadership that you provide within Healthy Start. But there's still challenges with reaching out to families. Obviously, you want to do as much as possible, but there's so much more out there that sometimes you can't do everything. And have you found that the request for your services and for Healthy Start thing has increased quite a bit?
Yes, we really don't need to advertise our services because it travels by word of mouth. We serve about 3,400 families a year, and that's not a small task. And we have a unique component that no other Healthy Start coalitions in the state of Florida have. We go to the hospital 7 days a week, and we see moms that are about to be discharged to make sure that they know they need to choose pediatric services for their babies, that they need to follow up with their OB appointments, and also that they are informed about safe sleep and they are supported in their breastfeeding efforts. And we want to keep connected with those families so that they can access the support services that we offer, all year long. And I am very proud of our community health workers. I think they are very committed people. The beauty is that we have spotted them and spotted their gifts. They have come from their own neighborhoods. They've been trained, and now they can go out into their neighborhoods and educate their peers. And that's the way that we need to do, because there are not too many people that can be cloned or replicated. We just have to empower them to use those tools.
And it's more that you've created, by the leadership and, through Mr. Leonard and obviously, just your dedication is this kind of grassroots type of thing. So those individuals that go out there, they have that same sense of commitment to help mothers, to help children, to provide the very best kind of service and information and education that allows them to have healthy and happy families.
And that is correct. That's exactly what happens. And perhaps Healthy Start has taken on a more active role in the community. In the last few years, we are called to give opinions because we know the population that we work with. And we work with Black families, Haitian families, Latino families, Caucasian families, and we know the realities. So our opinion is valued in terms of affordable housing, the gang prevention,
education,
school readiness, literacy, education. And I must say that METV, and particularly you, Charles, have been incredible friends and supporters. And I smile when I see you, which is very often working on weekends,
Yeah.
and see your team. You have a wonderful team of people that you've modeled this very professional and caring behavior. So.
Well, and I deeply appreciate it. And our staff and all of them, we do many things, but we always enjoy working with you because you bring that kind of sense of not only dedication that I talked about, but just this, just a great spirit to it. But I want to take a moment to talk about some of the outreach things that you've done and some of the things that we've participated in. And one of those things is that you provided a DVD to a lot of mothers who were going to be discharged, raising a healthy baby, which I thought was a very ambitious project, but it's something that really kind of resonated with families, and it's a whole variety of different things that a young family, young mother can say, oh, I want to find out about child safety seats, or I want to find out about safe sleeping, or I want to find out about breastfeeding or anything, and they can go there and find out that information. And to your great credit, Luz, you came to us with an idea and said, we want to get this to every mother in Manatee County that's having a child, and we want them to know that there's information and resources. It's just would help people find out more information. It can't be all within one DVD, but you came up with this idea, and it really was unique, it was innovative, and you really provided that to all these mothers, young mothers in Manatee County, and for that you're to be congratulated. But you have other initiatives too, and I think you mentioned something. Not everybody can deny your request. I mean, we've been with other things where you've had special events and everything where because of you, presents were provided to young children, food was provided to families, all because of the insistence and the great respect that you have within this community. I don't think anybody's ever turned you down for anything, and you're to be congratulated for that.
Oh, thank you, Charles. I think I am very lucky that I have great friends like yourself and many people who really care about the well-being of moms and babies. And they are the ones who say yes at all times, and we are very grateful because of their responses. And because of what you give, whether it's your time, your talent, or your financial resources, you always make a difference in somebody else's lives.
But Luz, I must tell you, because I mean, not only have you continued to do this and been great credit to Healthy Start and all the great things that they do, but the job is an ongoing thing. So I would say, there's challenges ahead. I mean, the population is increasing, the economy has an impact on families and their well-being. What do you see as those challenges that you need to overcome so you can continue on your mission to help, mothers and young families?
I think one of our greatest challenges is that we have a high rate of teen pregnancy. And in order to educate the community, we need to make sure that parents and children are able to talk about these. Mm-hmm. It's not only a job that the teachers in the school have to address, it's something that we all have to talk about. Unfortunately, in the past, many initiatives fail because we try to do this in a vertical way. Mm. Right now, I must say that I am very glad that we are partnering with some organizations, and we are addressing this in a different way. We are using the model of the community health worker, but we're going to train teen health educators so that the kids will have the tools to be able to establish conversation with the parents.
That's
and
important.
This is a model that I didn't invent. We are copying these from countries like Ecuador and Guatemala, where the programs have been very successful. When you give teenagers the self-confidence and the necessary affirmation to know that they are capable of reaching the sky, they can do a great job. And there are no limits for them. Their creativity just soars. And so I am hoping that this program will be equally successful. And again, we need it to do this in partnership. There is nothing that we can accomplish in isolation because we are all connected to each other in one form or another.
And I think that's an important point, is that as an organization, you always need to constantly evaluate and see what initiatives or what areas, you know, need the most work, or what kind of focus you can bring to those things. And I'm so glad that you and your partner organizations are going to be working towards some kind of conversation about teen pregnancy, because it has been an issue within Manatee County for many years.
Yes, and there is also another challenge, is that some women have elected to set a date for the delivery, and it's been happening before 39 weeks. And so seeing premature babies is really heartbreaking, seeing all their needs. And so we've really tried to follow the model that the March of Dimes has implemented, and addressing not before 39 weeks, so that the babies come to full term, and also to make sure that it doesn't become a choice for a person to decide when do they want their babies to be born, but the baby should come to full term.
Exactly.
And along with it, we also have the issue of the low birth weight babies.
And that's a serious, now it's not just Manatee or Florida. I mean, this is a problem that's kind of nationwide. And tell us how you know, some of the things that affect that low birth weight.
Babies don't develop fully like children that have come to full term, and so there are some issues that could present some challenges in the future. It's not an optimal child development. Also, in the cognitive side, there are some challenges. And so it requires a lot more attention from the parents, and other resources and money, because it's a cost to the system and to the taxpayers. So we have to make sure that we work on the prevention side rather than being reactive. Let's be proactive.
And and I've heard you speak before about that, and you know, again, how healthy families as we congratulate. You've done a number of speakers about prenatal care and the importance of that. How critical is that, you know, for young mothers?
I think it's really important that mothers or women in general are ready. We need to start before we even think about having a baby. We like to follow the model of the interconceptional care, which is focusing not only in the factors that are related to pregnancy, but also in all the blocks that, you know, keep adding throughout the life of a person. If a woman is raised in poverty and has all these psychosocial challenges, including race, the chances of this woman delivering a healthy baby are lower than the ones who don't face those challenges. So we have to look at life in terms of the life course perspective. And there is a great doctor that I deeply admire his work, Dr. Michael Liu from UCLA. And he talks about the life course perspective and the cumulative factors. We can't just isolate some factors. We have to look at the whole
You can't just say it's poverty, and you just can't say, well, it's education. It's a combination of all of these things that have the burden upon expectant mothers.
Exactly, and not only for the women, but also for the fathers. Dr. Liu, at one presentation, he said, we need the men to behave at least for 40 days, because that's the moment of inception. He said, after the baby is conceived, it's too late. We are talking about at least 40 days when they are thinking of having a baby, that a man has to be healthy, has to have good nutrition, exercise, be a non-smoker, not drink alcohol, you know, all those issues, to be a good boy, so that they can have a healthy child. And it's not only up to the woman, it's up to the couple. And there are women who deliver a baby, but also we need to think about the next baby who may come along. And so we have to work as a continuum of life and look at all these factors that need to be addressed right on time.
And I think that, you know, with the development of partnerships that you had with the Manatee Memorial Hospital and other physicians and outreach agencies throughout the county and throughout Sarasota as well, there is that, you know, raising of the bar if I may, for education and resources and outreach to provide this to women who desperately need it. And I think that you're to be congratulated on that. Now, Luz, we're kind of winding down a little bit, and I want to try to, touch on a couple of other things. The importance of your work, obviously, shines through. You're deeply committed and have a personal and philosophical importance of this. But you have the ability to outreach and to speak in front of government or business leaders and everything, but you speak for a lot of people who have no voice, the people who are economically challenged or perhaps by language or by culture, and so you have that you carry that obligation of speaking for people who possibly have no voice. And what is that message that you want to be heard?
Basically, I want people to know that every single human being has the right to live a life with dignity. And my dream is for people who can't use their voice or can't find their voice to be able to do so. I don't want them to depend on me. I don't want to be the spokesperson for the needy or the at risk. I want them to be able to use those resources and have the same opportunities that I have. And one of the issues that I support very dearly is for them to learn English, for instance. I am very connected with one of Sister Nora's causes, which is Project Light of Manatee. I am a volunteer there.
Tell us what Project Light of Manatee does and what's its major obligations.
Project Light provides English as a second language to any adult 18 and up. And we also have some students who went through school, but their reading level or the grammar is not up to par. And so they want to take some classes to be able to master the language. And I think it is a great organization. It's run primarily by volunteers,
right,
and they are properly trained, and we have appropriate materials that can be used for that purpose. But also it's a safe place for people where they can go and they can be themselves. The majority of our students at Project Light are now Haitian, men and women, and they have heartwarming stories, Charles. I met a gentleman who works in the field. He wakes up at 4 in the morning and goes to work in the field all day long, comes to Project Light at night at 6 p.m. and he's all sweaty, hardly washes his hands, and he's taking his English class because it is important for him. There is a gentleman who works in Lombok Key, and he rides his bike to work. He lives in Palmetto, and he comes back to Project Light, and riding his bike. And the other day, I was at Project Light, and there is this sweet woman, Marie. She had worked all night, and she didn't want to miss her morning class. And she told me that she was learning the language so well that she was so happy that they could understand her better at work. And then I went to a local restaurant one day, and this Latino man who used to be a lawyer in Mexico, he had to start from zero. He didn't know the language, and so he became a busboy in the restaurant, then a waiter. So I was dining there, and he comes and he says hello to me, and then he calls his manager. Just the pride that he's moved up to being a waiter now, and his manager speaks so highly of him and how hard he works. So those are real people who have a lot of challenges, and they are working really hard. They are not people that are here because they want to take advantage of the system. They are people who have children, who have dreams, and they give equally to this community. They pay taxes, they worship here, they shop here, they contribute to the economy. So the misperception that they are milking the system is totally inaccurate, because for one, they are not able to milk the system. There are some requirements for people to do that. They are just hardworking people that want to provide a better future for their children. And so my dream is for them to come on this show one day and tell their stories and tell you how much they appreciate everything that people have done for them.
And I think that would be a welcome opportunity. And I can't think of very many people in this community who have the level and the depth of commitment that you have to other people, to helping other people, as you do, Luz. And I think it's a wonderful thing. And I think it's a broad spectrum of individuals as well. It's mothers and children, it's that individual riding a bike to work, it's people trying to learn English. The scope of your commitment to others is, I think, great in the legacy of Sister Nora and all those other people. And also as a tribute to your family as well, to your parents and to Luis and your daughters, because you really kind of fulfill that obligation, is that to do unto others. And I think you're really to be congratulated. If I must say, I just want to take a moment. You just recently had an event over at Renaissance on 9th, which is, for a healthy start. And an individual who gave the invocation, Judge Durand Adams, talked to you, said to you that, Luz Corcuera is the angel that was put here to help other people. And I couldn't think of a more glowing recommendation than that. So Luz, again, we want to thank you for being here. And I want to give you the last word on this, is that, not only do the work that you do for Healthy Start, but for the value of all of the people in this community, you have made just great efforts, Herculean efforts, and to help others. What would you say to people throughout this community, what they can do perhaps to help others?
I would say it doesn't take very much to do something meaningful for the other. For one is to recognize, not to be afraid of the other, to recognize that there is a person next to us that may be a little different, may not be able to speak properly, but yet it's still a person with value, with dignity, and to pay attention to those differences and never be afraid of them. And second, to think about globally in terms of who we are. We are all here as Americans in this business. We love this country and we want to do what's best for our country. Mm-hmm. But we need to start paying attention to the very beginning. From the moment that we see parents having children, we can't afford to have parents who need parents to be parents at the same time. Exactly. Those kids still need a mother and a father, and they are not ready for parenting. Yes. And we also have to make an effort to share the responsibility. Mm. And maybe tell our legislators that if they don't invest in the right resources, the future not only of Florida, but of America is at stake. We need to invest in our mothers, in our babies, in our children. And it's a shared responsibility. It is a community effort.
Luz, I can say how eloquent that was, and again, special thanks. And I'd like to leave with a quote that you provided, and I think this is something that is a driving force for you, and you quoted Mother Teresa as saying, "If we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten that we belong to each other." So on that thought, thank you, and thank you for all the work that you do, for the work that you have done, and the work that you'll continue to do in this community, because you really are a community connection. And thank you for joining us on this special edition of Community Connections.